Is it too early to talk about the film? If we haven't introed in a organic way yet?
No, go on.
Okay. Oh no, I just had a lot of fun with that film. I was expecting it to be more horrible.
Garbage.
No. I was expecting a bad film, but I was expecting a film with more like, real tension or scope of like the intensity of the combat in the film and the violence. It was like just sort of an M-rated Power Rangers.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Like it's got the main outfit's very reminiscent of like Kamen Rider, and he could be a Power Rangers character. I think he was, right? The Guyver is from it's like a film adaptation of a manga or
It is, yeah.
So I didn't know that going in. So I was like, this has got real kids show energy, except for the bits that it's really horrible, where there's like super, super gross stuff. But I was like, I think if I watched this when I was maybe 14, so good.
Yeah, it's got pretty cartoonish costume energy.
Yeah.
A lot of the fight scenes are very like, I was going to say kick punch. Like, yeah, all fight scenes are kick punch, idiot.
Right, but you can see, fists impacting like plasticine, basically, like a lot of the time. Like they're not leaving marks in the foam, but it's everyone's very made out of foam. It works. I really liked the special effects in it. It's like the sort of the some of them were very Cronenberg, like really just like things popping out of people's bodies and weird little stringy tentacles. I know we're getting into the more late game, but like some of them, gosh, I was just like, this is revolting. This is more revolting than any CGI I've seen in recent memory.
That's practical effects for you.
Yeah.
They got to bring them back.
They really do. It really seemed like there was a lot of this film that was like, you could not make this kind of film today. The sort of amount of things that they did that I was like, I haven't seen this sort of technique in a movie before in a long time.
Well, Tom McLean,
hello.
Welcome to Reanimates.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you, and it's a pleasure to be talking about this movie with you because it was strange. Technically, it's called The Guyver from 1991, even though the opening credits only say Guyver.
Yes.
Also known as Mutronics in parts of Europe and South America. Greece had my favourite title for it, though, which is Alien Cop.
Yeah, okay. I guess it's about that. Like it's about those words.
Yeah, those words are involved, vaguely. I wouldn't say that the character is a cop, just a guy.
No,
really.
certainly not. The protagonist he's not a cop. Mark Hamill is a cop, and you'd think he was the protagonist from the poster.
Yes, that is something that a lot of people talk about, is the fact that Mark Hamill is in this film, and he is portrayed for all intents and purposes on the poster as being not only the main character, but the Guyver, and he is not.
He's absolutely not.
As mentioned, Guyver is loosely based on the Japanese manga series of the same name by Yoshiki Takaya, and this movie was directed by one of our favourite special effects guys, Screaming Mad George, who's amazing.
Ah, he's new to me.
Well, he did the effects for a huge amount of Jeff films, including Beyond Reanimator, Faust, Necronomicon, Bride of Reanimator. He also did the amazing, non-Jeff related but still great film Society, which I've talked about. This was his directing debut, and it's also his only feature-length directing effort. He made a short film called Boy in the Box in 2004, and then that was it. I guess he didn't want to direct anymore.
I guess it's doing a lot of things that aren't practical special effects. I mean, you can tell from this film that it's something that he's keen on, right?
Yeah. His career has been, by and large, special effects.
Yeah. So he's like, right, I've done the other stuff, but it'd be nice to get back to special effects, hey?
Yeah, and surprisingly, he only did a very small amount on this. I think he designed one of the creature heads, and that's it.
Oh, right. He outsourced that. Huh.
Yeah. It was also co-directed by Steve Wang, who I don't know much about, but he seems to be another effects guy. He did effects for Predator, Bill and Ted Face the Music. Most importantly to me, though, he was the head monster maker on 1987's Monster Squad, which is one of my favourite 1980s horror movies. Jeffrey Combs is in it, but it's still good. This is also his directing debut as well, but he did a bunch of stuff afterwards, including the Guyver sequel, Dark Hero, in 1994.
Uh-huh.
So he went on to carry the Guyver name into the future. It was written by John Purdy, who doesn't have a huge amount of credits, but he did direct the 1995 Dillinger and Capone movie, in which Jeffrey Combs had a small role. So, all roads lead to Jeffrey.
Yes, I also thought I'd recognised David Gale from something else, he plays the villain, and I looked him up, and I don't think I've seen him in anything. He's just got a very, striking face, but he's clearly appears alongside Jeffrey Combs, and it seems like there's a bit of the group of actors that all like work together, and filmmakers and stuff that there's they're like the Mod Squad or the Boys Crew or something. And they've got like one of those going on for like campy special effectsy things. You'd see the same sort of cast of characters appearing in a bunch of those films, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And this film was produced by Brian Usner, who is a very familiar name to Jeffrey Combs. They've done heaps and heaps of stuff together. It's ridiculous. This is a family affair. It's great.
Yes, a family. Yes,
like that Mary J. Blige song. I couldn't think of another Mary J. Blige song to finish the joke.
I can't think of any Mary J. Blige songs.
So we open with text crawl, a la Star Wars, and I'm sure other films.
It's one that's fallen out of favour, and I think to the medium's detriment. The sort of amount of just like shit that they put in that opening crawl for this movie particularly is bonkers. It's not just like the rebels are evading the villainous empire, this guy's the villain. There is like a book's worth of lore in this thing. I was watching just being like, holy shit, this is great.
I prefer it that way rather than have really clunky expositional dialogue in the film, because that stuff is always really like awkward and hammy.
We open on whatchamacallit, the doctor like running away, and he's got the briefcase, and like the first thing he does is like drops to his knee, opens it, there's the Guyver. Thanks to the opening crawl, I was like, oh, that's the Guyver. Like nobody had to say, oh, what's that? Like straight to it.
Well, I'll read the opening crawl so that you two, listener, are
yeah,
as far in as we are. At the beginning of time, aliens came to the Earth to create the ultimate organic weapon. They created mankind. Thanks, aliens. By planting a special gene into man, they created the zoonoids, humans who can change at will into super monster soldiers. Eons later, the zoonoid leader, called the Zoa Lord, has awakened and formed the Kronos Corporation to further develop the zoonoid technology for world domination. Among the alien remains was found the Unit, a bio-boosted alien armor. Worn by the aliens, it serves as an ordinary shield. If the wearer is human, it increases his natural powers 100-fold. He becomes the Guyver, but how to activate it remains a mystery. Dr. Tetsu Sagawa, a research scientist at Kronos, senses danger if this unit is activated by the Zoa Lord. Now the Doctor has stolen it and is on the run. And he is indeed on the run, and that's where we cut into. That is a huge info dump.
It's also like some of the revelations that are in the opening crawl are... they're big revelations. Humanity was just created artificially by aliens as a weapons project. Like that's the first thing that we learn. Later when it comes up, it's not... if it was a normal film, that would have to be delivered as a bombshell revelation. And humans were created as a weapon by the... It's like, no. We don't want to pay attention to that. Let's get the humans were created as a weapon out of the way by the aliens. Now we're all across that. Let's start the movie.
Yeah, the fact that humanity was created by aliens is not the point. The point is this weird fucked machine.
Yeah, I want to talk about this weird machine. You keep asking me questions about, what about the nature of humanity? No. It's not that kind of film. We want to talk about the thing that turns one guy into a robot. That's what's interesting.
The Guyver looks like a robo vacuum.
Considering how like wild some of the practical special effects are in this one, in terms of like weird, like sort of partially fleshy, like weird. The Guyver itself is just like, a little vacuum-formed piece of plastic with a knob, and that's like about it. It's really quite unimpressive.
Yeah, I suppose though, as we find out, it's more important what the Guyver does than what it looks like. So Sagawa is indeed on the run, and he's trying to hide the Guyver. He's apprehended by some folks, one of which is Jimmy Walker from Good Times, playing Stryker. And you know what? I'm going to come out and say it at the start. He fucking sucks in this movie. Oh my God. Like, I don't know. Like, I haven't seen much of Good Times, so I don't know if... but that show went on for ages. He can't have been this bad in that show.
I'm not super familiar with Good Times, but he was definitely terrible in this.
Yeah, and look, it's not an amazing script, but I feel like there's people in this movie that are doing fine with the script.
Yeah.
If anything, he was annoying whenever he was on whenever he was on screen.
Yeah. I will credit, I guess, all of the sort of henchmen. They behave so strangely that I immediately twigged that they were aliens. Like, when they started shapeshifting, I was like, okay, that explains it, rather than, oh gosh, they're aliens. I was like, as soon as they showed up and started talking, I was like, these guys are weird as hell. So I think the fact that they're annoying is like part of them just being super weird. They talk and act so strangely.
There's no room for subtlety in a movie like this.
Yeah, no.
The leader of the baddies is horror icon Michael Berryman playing Liska. He's great.
He's very good.
He's actually got... We find out later he's actually got quite an interesting character, and I'm going to base that on one scene that we see later, which we'll talk about. But yeah, Sagawa turns into a monster, kind of a fish monster, and then Liska does too, so we get a monster fight.
Yes.
Yeah, the fight scenes in general in this movie aren't too bad. Like, they're not as cheap and nasty as other films, but they're not like super interesting, but that's fine.
Yeah. I remember thinking while watching them a very sort of dispassionate, like, oh, this is well executed. Like, I think if it was better, I'd be like, oh shit. And if it was worse, I would have complaints. But as it was, I was like, okay, yeah, he's, you can see who's punching who. You can follow the course of the action. Well done. C+ everybody.
The sound effects seem to be, reasonably lined up with the actions that are happening. That's fine. Liska does win. Seemingly he crushes Sagawa's brain.
Yeah. This one, in my own notes, I've got written, it goes so hard immediately. Holy shit. 'Cause the sort of campness of like the actual like swinging punches and that sort of thing is like, oh sure. And then when he actually gets into the brain crushing, goo spraying, like the disintegration of the body sort of things, I was like, oh wow, this sort of level of intensity took a couple of levels up right away. That's They gotta
set you up. You have to know that this is gonna be a gooey film.
Yeah.
So the bad guys have the Guyver. Now we're off to an Aikido lesson where our goofy looking protagonist is learning how to fight. This is Jack Armstrong playing Sean Baker. Not a hugely interesting protagonist, as we learn.
The low point of the film, I think, is this guy. Maybe not to be too harsh on him, but he's a very annoying character with really nothing to show.
I mean, Jack Armstrong, I think, is doing his best with the script, because I think that this character is ultimately, as we'll talk about, kind of mismatched. It also isn't helped by the fact that, so he's met by his girlfriend Mizuki, played by Vivian Wu. Mizuki is watching Sean's class. The one thing I will say about this is that these two have zero chemistry in this film.
When I read the Wikipedia for this after watching it, and it said his girlfriend Mitsuki, I was like, his girlfriend? Like, they have so little chemistry. I thought that they had never met, and he was harboring a crush on her, and she was a bit scared of him. That's how I would describe their chemistry, is him being weird and her being visibly reluctant.
Well, especially because I would argue that she has greater chemistry with the next character that we meet, Max Reed, CIA, who is Mr. Mark Hamill.
Mr. Mark Hamill, at his dampest.
He is... Wait, damp?
He gave the impression of being sweaty to me at all times in this film.
I didn't realise that was radiating off the screen. I didn't get damp, but I so rarely do. Yeah, turns out Mizuki is Sagawa's daughter, and he informs her that her dad is dead, and they leave together. We then go to the Kronos Corporation, and that name is killing me. Has that been used in another film?
Oh, it comes up. It's sort of just like it's the Greek word for time. So it just gets used in genre fiction all over the place because it's got a good evocative sound.
Yeah, it must have been used in other things. I keep thinking that it's a reference to something, but it's probably a reference to lots of things. Yeah,
it's kind of like if it was called the Omega Corporation, you wouldn't be like, oh, Omega, what's that? Nah, it's just a word.
Just an ominous sounding word. Well, it's here that we meet Fulton Balkus, played by the wonderful David Gale. For those who don't know, most notably he was Dr. Hill in Reanimator. He's the head. He's excited because Liska has brought in the Guyver, or so he thinks. Turns out it's a toaster.
I guess there was like a switcheroo performed. Very clever.
It also turns out that Fulton has like magical powers, like telekinesis or mind control or something, because he makes Liska like beat himself up.
And not in like a punchy way. Like it's not just like punch, punch, punch. It's a lot of like clawing and grabbing at his own face and, you know, stretching it out. It seemed very uncomfortable. And then his final line of I'll make you slap yourself into oblivion. That was kind of what was going on. Like it wasn't I'll make you punch yourself. It was a very open-handy, much more horrifying, I think, than just being like I can make you hit yourself.
Here's just a little clip of David Gale's vibe in this, and it definitely makes me feel that there is nothing more upsetting than David Gale being mad at you.
What is this? Some sort of masochistic...
Terrifying, as always.
He was very, very good. Both of those villains are, they were great.
So Sean does follow Max and Miski to the crime scene, and he finds the real Guyver. I will post a picture of it because it does look like some sort of Robovac or like a 90s board game set. Like it's...
Yes. When it cuts back to the crime scene, it introduced such a striking filmmaking decision of not just the sort of like screen transition effect like you see in like the Star Wars of like the wipe, but like an audio sting that it plays. It's like ta-tow! It's just like now we're at the crime scene. That made me jump out of my seat. I haven't seen somebody do just a full like sting between scenes in a like feature length movie in such a long time. I was like,
yeah, that was literally my next note was the quality of these scene cuts. It's like a really harsh sound with a literal like razor cut visually along the screen. I'll post a clip of the whole thing so you can get the visual and the audio. It's very audacious. Something else they do in this film that I agree with far less. The goons are back at the crime scene looking for the Guyver, and then this happens.
Yo, mama, why you wanna be so crude? You must think of me as one rude dude. But you do run with the sugar and spice, so why don't you just act real nice?
I mean, look, I know that it was the 90s. I know that that style of rap was not as cringy then as it is now. But it is so cringy now. That's the thing. Like, I cannot watch it. It makes me crawl out of my skin.
it's horrible.
Especially the sort of the pose at the end. I'll post a picture of that as well. But I don't know why that's the most disgusting thing in this movie.
It was so like jarring that it sort of like put me out of it put me out of the action for a while when the aliens started rapping.
I guess they were like that's the thing in the 90s where it's like, hey, you've got one black actor in this movie, you better make him rap. So Sean is accosted by some alleyway hoodlums, and they're written and acted as about as well as any other 90s toughies in bad movies. It's terrible that is always one thing that bad movies are particularly bad at, is writing like tough guys.
Yeah, this one was also like, in my notes, I was thinking because they also behave so weirdly, like they're so strangely written and acted, that I was like, are these guys aliens as well?
In the same way that a year or two ago everything was cake, in this movie everything is aliens.
Yeah.
I think briefly this scene is going for like old kung fu movie vibes.
Yeah.
There's a couple of little decisions that make me think, okay, I kind of see what they're going for. But that could just be a strange coincidence.
The leader of the gang is from his Aikido class earlier.
Within the fight, the Guyver gets pressed or turned on or whatever it is, and it attaches itself to Sean's face and turns him into Guyver Monster Guy.
Yes.
The costume is actually pretty great. I'll post a picture. He has a sort of a head blade fin, a bit like a shark. He also has these weird like air pressure vents on his face that like, what are the, oh, this is going to sound so dumb. What are the things on top of a train that go like choo, like that?
Oh, the choo-choo.
What's that?
Pipes.
Yeah, some sort of smoke pipe that releases smoke.
It's a smokestack when it's on a factory.
Is it a smokestack when it's on anything else?
I think it is. I think it's a smokestack. Oh,
Okay,
the word's chimney.
Chimney, a little bit, yeah. Well, yeah, because
He doesn't have chimneys on his helmet. That's not what I
No.
would say.
Yeah, the costume's very strange because it looks mechanical, but it also looks like skin. Like gross skin, but still skin.
It's got like sort of chitinous plates, and then you can see like sinewy, muscly bits underneath them, linking them together.
So he's super strong, bulletproof, and he has retractable like arm blades things like Wolverine. It's a great suit. But the point is, after the fight, he freaks out. He's like, no, and then the suit disappears. So is that how it works?
he freaks out when he sees his reflection in the trash can lid that the Tough tries to use as a shield, because he transforms, but he doesn't realize he's transformed. He just sort of, I guess, thinks he's winning.
Yeah. He doesn't notice that his body has taken on an entirely different shape, weight, color. He doesn't realize he has blades out of his arms now.
Ability to one-handed throw gangsters across fences and halfway down the length of the alleyway. Yeah.
Yeah, he just kind of thinks the Guyver away. It disappears, which I guess is, I guess you can just kind of turn it on and off.
Yeah. It also like comes off him. It doesn't just like vanish. It like bursts off, like the plates like launch out into the, like blast, 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 little fast montage of plates of armor just like being hurled away. And then it also has a bunch that like retracts into the back of his neck. And that was when I was like, my first sort of like, oh, that's very Cronenbergy of like, you see the sort of little nodules on his neck with like little openings and little tentacles going sucking into them. Have you seen Existenz?
No.
It's a bit Existenz. It's just got a lot of orifices in places where people shouldn't have orifices sort of movie.
Don't tell people where they shouldn't have orifices.
Yeah,
Tom.
no judgment. If you got an orifice in the back of your neck where you keep your power armor, that's fine with me.
This is a no orifice shaming podcast. So we're back at the Kronos Corporation. There's a great shot of David Gale sitting there drinking tea, which I'll post. He looks happy as Larry. Nice long man sitting there having a cup of tea. Liska goes to see Fulton. There's a weird moment when Fulton gets up and he does his like walk in a circle and reprimand him and chew him out, being menacing. But the big napkin that he had in his lap from drinking his tea is still hanging from his jacket.
Oh yeah.
That's just a weird oversight. Like, is that meant to make the character look silly, or did they just not notice that it was still there?
Yeah. Cut. Try it again without the bib this time.
The bib makes you look a little bit less menacing, sir. I'm not doing another take. I think David Gale would do another take. He seems like a perfectly nice man.
He does another take without the bib, immediately spills his applesauce down all the front of his shirt. Oh, see, this is why I did it with the bib. I told you guys.
This is my favorite suit.
Oh no, I got it everywhere.
Oh, it's in my shoes. Starts crying. His handler has to come by, give him a lollipop. He commands Liska to bring him Mizki. And he has also, even though this has been like a menacing scene mostly, it ends on a comedic note because Fulton has started utilizing the toaster from earlier, and he gets angry at the burnt toast that pops out of it. It's very silly.
Oh, yeah. I just thought he was making toast to go with his tea generally, but it's the toaster from earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes a lot more sense. The toast is fully on fire in the toaster. It's not a usual thing that happens with a toaster. It just gets burnt. But his is like flames.
Presumably why they threw the toaster out in the first place, whoever owned it before that.
We know it's a broken toaster. He does smash the toast back into the toaster in rage.
So Sean goes to see Mizki, and he's coming on awfully horny for someone who literally just found out that his girlfriend's dad died. The scene literally goes from, I'm so sorry your dad died, let's make out. They get interrupted by somebody.
She's like on board with it though. Like I was like, this is in my own notes, just saying, man, it's not the time, dude. And then the next one, but also this girl is so weird. You know, he's like coming on a bit and she's like, yeah, I do really feel very lonely at the moment.
Yeah, well, yeah, she's DTF as well. But it's like, you know, look, we all grieve in different ways. So he goes to get some food. He's like, I'll be back later.
They get interrupted though. This was a particularly strange interaction to me, where they get interrupted by his Aikido teacher who shows up, who wanted to give Mitsuki some documents or a book or something. He's sort of a bit sort of embarrassed and caught off guard because he wasn't expected to be interrupted when he was about to kiss Mitsuki. This is his Aikido teacher. Like, surely he's like, oh, you know, hi, it's you. He's like, oh, I'll have to go then. I didn't realize you had a guest coming over. I don't want to interrupt. And both of them are like, oh, she's just dropping off a book. It'll be a minute. And he's like, no, I have to go. And they're both like quite insistent, like this long scene of them being like, no, she's literally here for 4 seconds to drop off a book. And him being like, no, I have to leave. And they're being like, you can stay. I have to go. And it's like, no, she'll be 1 minute. I'm going to go around. I'm going to go get dinner and then I'll come back. How's that? And they're like, I guess. And then he leaves.
It's so pointless. And it's also such a deflating moment in the film whenever we have to deal with these two just in their interpersonal stuff. Like, I cannot care less about this relationship in this film. There is no reason that I care. Like, I mean, if these two weren't even in a relationship and they just happened to be the two main characters, even then I'm like, all right, fine. They don't have much like on-screen chemistry, but whatever. It's so boring, but thankfully Mitski gets kidnapped. So I guess that stops our interpersonal drama for a while.
He goes around the block to get some dinner and then he comes back and the place is trashed. She's been kidnapped, and his Aikido teacher's been murdered. She's dead on the floor of the apartment there. I feel like the movie was framing her as not a villain, obviously. She's just the Aikido teacher, but someone who's at odds with our protagonist. Because the only sort of interactions we see with her and the protagonist and Sean are like her telling him off for being distracted during the class that she was trying to run. Where he's like, oh, you can't be mad at me for being distracted. Mitski's over there. Of course I want to look at her, right? and then this, where he's interrupted their kissing, and then where she's interrupted their kissing, and then she gets murdered, and it just feel like the movie was like, she got her comeuppance. She should have been nicer to Sean. Like, it wasn't a tragic death where he's like, oh, my Aikido teacher. She taught me all the Aikido that I ever knew. I've got, where's Mitski? Shame about this, this disciplinary force in my life who's now gone.
That's what you get for cock blocking.
Yeah.
Liska and the flunkies have dressed up as movers and they wrap Mitski up in like a carpet, like mafia style. It's like a cartoon. It's very silly. There's also the sweet moment that I was talking about earlier where Liska and one of his goons, Weber, played by Spice Williams, who is actually mostly works as a stunt double and a performer.
All right.
Yeah, stunt performer. It turns out they're dating in the movie and they're like sitting in the car waiting for the other flunkies to do stuff and they're like planning a trip to Brazil. It's actually really nice.
Yeah, it's just like this weird little moment of depth. They want to go on holiday to Brazil. In my notes here, I've just got, isn't he a fish alien though?
Are you saying that Brazil doesn't let fish aliens in? Are you saying that their borders have gotten so stringent that they don't let fish aliens in?
So, certainly Bolsonaro's got some, weird, discriminatory policies. I can't believe he's pro-fish alien.
So this next scene is a bit messy. So Max arrives at the exact same time that Sean is watching the flunkies load Mitski into the van.
He does realise that she's in there. He's gone in, found the body, come back out. Mitski's in the van.
So Max holds off Liska and the gang, and Sean takes off with Mitski.
Oh yeah, he smashes the beer bottles on the aliens' heads. And they immediately fall unconscious.
That's how it works.
Yeah.
So while in pursuit, Stryker turns into a monster guy and he leaps over a wall and he happens upon a film set.
Yes.
A woman sees him, screams her head off, and then a director calls cut and comes out of nowhere. It's a scene that goes nowhere, and it's kind of funny. And it just sort of ends on a comedic note. But I think that they were just like, we need a reason for them not to catch up with Sean, so we'll just put him into a film set.
It's fully a joke. Like, it sort of pauses the action of the movie at an intense point, right? He's just knocked out the aliens. He's just recovered his girlfriend from being kidnapped. They're on the run from, like, now in alien form aliens. And the movie's like, right now, though, 4-minute comedy sketch. Then we'll get back to the chase scene.
A fun moment is that the Scream Queen in that scene is Linnea Quigley, an incredibly prolific horror actress. Return of the Living Dead, Night of the Demons, Silent Night, Deadly Night, Pumpkinhead 2. Basically, if you've seen a horror movie from the 80s, you've seen Linnea Quigley.
Huh.
She's great. So this cameo made me think that this might be a good time to pause and play a slightly skewed version of the game that I debuted on the pod last week.
Okay.
So last week I gave my guest, Evie, a list of movies and TV shows, and she had to discern which ones were real and which ones I made up.
Ooh, okay.
So this week, inspired by Linnea Quigley's cameo in this movie, we're going to play fake or real Linnea Quigley movie.
Rad.
Self-explanatory, right? Yeah, I'm going to give you a list and you just tell me which ones you think are genuine Linnea Quigley movies or which ones I made up.
All right, hit me.
All right. Sorority Babes in the Slime Ball Bowlerama 2.
Okay. I'm going to start. That's real.
That is real. That is a
Yes.
sequel that is currently filming the sequel to the original from 1988.
Nice.
Vampire Hookers of West Memphis.
Fake.
Correct. That is one of my attempts to make a stupid sounding movie.
I think it's less stupid sounding than the first one. And I was like, you're not going to put a second real one in there. I was maybe trying to get into your head a bit more than just sort of assessing horror movie names. What's number 3?
Robot Ninja.
Oh, real.
It is real. It is from 1989. The plot is thus: a scientist helps a comic book artist to become the superhero he has created in order to battle a vicious gang of rapists.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Takes a turn. Virgin High.
Okay. Yeah, real.
It is real. It is an R-rated comedy from 1991. Here's the plot. I mean, it sounds like what you imagine.
Mm-hmm.
When Christy Murphy comes home past midnight with her boyfriend Jerry, her parents send her to the Academy of the Blessed Virgin, a Catholic school run by kind but very strict nuns. So because that's an R-rated comedy, I assume that is mostly Christy Murphy fucking up a storm at this academy.
Yeah, sexy hijinks ensue. There's as a sort of premise, and she has to go to a Catholic school run by nuns. It's like the end. No. There's a whole movie happens.
Assault of the Party Nerds.
Fake.
That's real.
Ah, damn it.
I know, it's a horrible title because it sounds like something horrible is going to happen, but it is a 1989 comedy. Richie Spencer and his friends have a problem. They are only 4 members of their fraternity, and they're all graduating. They must find a way to bring in more members before they leave and dodge their way around the rival jock fraternity. Classic 80s comedy. Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll be happy to know that one has a sequel too. Assault of the Party Nerds 2, The Heavy Petting Detective.
Oh.
Where the protagonist runs a detective agency. These are real films that happen in our world.
They did a lot of cocaine in the 80s. They just made anything. They're like, that's a good idea. Print it.
Is it an excuse for tits? Print it. Alright, next one. Sextopolis.
Gotta be real.
That's fake.
That's fake!
Mm-hmm.
Ah, my streak.
I mean, there might be a movie called Sextopolis, but if there is, it is not a Linnea Quigley movie. Burial of the Rats.
Real.
It is real. 1995. This one actually sounds great. In 19th century France, a young Bram Stoker is captured by a man-hating all-female cult of thong bikini wearers.
Okay.
Aided by flesh-eating rats, the warrior women raid the lairs of evil men and punish them. Our hero must decide between his wish to escape the dangerous cult and his love for one of its members. Sounds awesome. I don't know what the fuck Bram Stoker has to do with that movie, but I'm into it.
Right, because he wasn't Dracula. He's just an author. But I guess, he had his own adventures.
Killer Succubus from the Sea.
I'm going to say it's fake.
It is fake. Very good.
Succubuses don't come from the sea. It'd be a siren.
Ah, you got me on that.
Killer succubuses from hell, killer sirens from the sea. Both would have got me.
But are you saying that a succubus couldn't come from the sea?
I mean, I'm not going to tell them how to live their lives. But I think mainly, I guess my assumption there is 80s movies executives wouldn't get Greek mythology wrong, would they?
Absolutely not. Sex Files, Pleasureville.
Oh, I want to say that one's fake.
That one's real.
That just sounds like a softcore porno.
I have to assume it's just pornography. Aliens masquerading as owners of a small-town video store distribute tapes that cause anyone who watches them to pleasure themselves and whoever else is nearby.
All right, yep.
That's just pornography. Last one. Bigfoot versus D.B. Cooper.
Can I get a hint on this one? Which is, who's D.B. Cooper again?
He was the guy that hijacked a plane.
That's the one, and he mysteriously disappeared.
Mysteriously disappeared, yep.
I'm going to say it's real.
It is real.
Yay!
And I want to watch it.
Yeah.
It's actually not... It's from 2014.
Okay.
It's not an 80s movie, but... So when several young hunters arrive at a secluded lodge in the Pacific Northwest, little do they know that they will become the hunted.
I wonder if D.B. Cooper is a monster in that movie, or if he helps them out.
All right, 7 out of 10.
Hey, not bad. That's a credit.
I will create a leaderboard and also a theme because I enjoy doing this game and I am going to do it more.
Lovely.
So back to the film.
Back to the film. Where were we?
Eventually all the goons transform into their own monster alter egos. And yeah, there's some great costumes. I'll post pictures of the various monster costumes. They definitely make the movie look less cheap and nasty.
They're like low budget costumes, but they're well executed for low budget. Like, or maybe they're not low budget. Maybe they're high budget costumes and I'm just used to, 2021 super CGI slickness. And so seeing any practical effect, I'm like, well, obviously that's lower budget than hiring ILM to do everything. Like, they're really good. I really liked all of the alien costumes. They all had good, this one's furry, this one's got like a weird dangly nose, this guy's got like a big bulbous head. Just good, like, character design, I thought.
Yeah, they're all wildly different to each other so that you can tell them all apart. Another thing I liked is that they've got fluidity of movement.
Yeah.
So they're not these big bulky costumes that causes the actor in them to like shuffle around, which is good because it makes the fight scenes much less clunky.
Good alien costumes. I thought that like in the opening scenes where it's just sort of they both just look like fish aliens. I just thought, oh right, all the monsters are fish aliens. But then as they start like more of them transforming, they have more distinct styles. I was like, oh, check it out. They've got like, it's not just fish aliens versus humans. Everyone's a different alien.
Fish aliens versus humans. Real or fake Linnea Quigley movie. So there's a lot of fighting, a lot of chasing. Max gets beat up a lot. One of the monsters I like has vaguely like elephant-like qualities. So he has a long elephant nose and he also makes a sort of robot elephant noise. It's quite fun. So Sean becomes Guyver Sean again. And the sequence of him changing is a lot of fun. It's quite well shot, actually, for the rest of the film, this sequence of him changing. I'll try and post it.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite good.
It's very, like, Sailor Moon magical girl transformation sequence. Like, parts flying in from off, him doing, like, a pose.
Yeah, it is. He's Sailor Moon. That makes me like him more. There's a fun moment where Stryker is like, yo, catch! And he tries to throw a jigsaw blade to one of the other baddies, and it just goes right into his head.
Oh, yeah, he just kills him. He's like, oh, whoops.
Yeah, just chucking a saw blade at someone. Dumbass. Liska manages to wrench the Guyver out of Sean's head.
Oh, yeah, he gives him like a headbutt, and it like makes the Guyver glitch out because he knocked him in his special orb vulnerability zone at the center of his forehead, and he's like, it's the ball that's his weak spot, and then they yank it out. Yeah,
he just melts away like Sagawa at the start, just turns into like a pile of goo, real slime fest, which is crazy because you're like, I thought that was our protagonist and we still have half an hour left of this movie. That's
a huge point in the film. I was like, oh, hold on. This is not just doing like a by the numbers, he's gets the artifact, like he's pursuing the item, he gets in 3 fights of escalating intensity and then wins. They fucking kill the protagonist in the second fight. Not gruesomely, but certainly splatterily. Like he's some stuff by the end of that scene.
There is nothing left of him but, a sort of stain on the floor. You're sort of like, okay, that's interesting. Where is this going to go now? Okay, maybe we'll get some more time with the real romantic interests of this film, Mitski and Max. Mitski is knocked out and she wakes up in Fulton's office. We cut to David Gale being creepy towards a young woman again. If you've seen Reanimator, you'll know that that's his entire vibe in that movie. Also, the character is. I don't believe that David Gale is doing this, like, off script. I have to stress it is Fulton doing this. Fulton has taken Mitski up to his office to talk about getting the Guyver working, and he takes her through his growth corridor, which is not a euphemism. It is a room full of zoonoids, the alien monster guys. Here's just a little clip of David Gale's evolutionary theories.
You see, my dear, a long time ago, when the planet was barren, the aliens descended upon the earth and created man.
The aliens?
That's right. Man was created as the ultimate organic weapon. And these are the next step in the evolutionary process. Warriors developed by the aliens from the human species. In times past, they were known as werewolves, minotaurs, vampires. Can you imagine these lovely creatures in the White House?
And see, it doesn't come out of left field because we saw it in the opening crawl. They were like, obviously the aliens created the people. Let's get to the Guyver.
Come on, people want to see the Guyver.
His speech about his sort of like, you know, he's describing his evil master plan of like, you know, oh, we'll get all of these super soldiers evolved up and then put them in the White House. Is his line?
Yeah.
Where he's like, I'm gonna breed these transforming alien super soldiers and then get them elected president. Like, it's such a strange sort of twist in the plan. I was a big fan of that.
Yeah, it is weird that even though the President of the United States of America is an incredibly powerful position, I imagine that an alien monster could do more than that office. I think that they could have powers even beyond the powers of the White House.
Right.
Much like Donald Trump, I don't imagine that alien monsters are very good with like paperwork and bureaucracy and meetings. You know, like imagine like alien monster guy at the UN summit. He's not going to understand that or enjoy it.
Right, and they're not bred to be smart. They're bred to be strong, right? Like they're physical transformations. But it's still like, and then they will serve the Constitution of the United States of America.
No, they won't. They'll go to the UN and they'll rip Angela Merkel's fucking head off. So Fulton and Miski end up in the lab where we meet your friend and mine.
It's our guy.
It's our guy, Dr. East, played by Jeffrey Combs. Dr. East, get it?
I did get it. It took me a while because I haven't seen Reanimated, but I was like, oh, right, yep.
Yeah, it's a shameless little joke, but it's fine.
Yeah.
He's fucking around with a monster head. Here's a little quote of just Jeff being Jeff.
Sir, Mr. Palkus, this is, this is genetics. You know, not all mutations are created equal.
Dr. East is also like a little bit of a creep as well. Like
Oh yeah.
He just sort of stands there like staring at Mitski, like looking her up and down. I'll make a gif of it. It's actually kind of strange. But Jeff is great. He's always great. He's being a little bit wacky, but mostly just like eccentric scientist guy.
Yeah, classic mad scientist stereotype. Just played to the hilt.
Dr. East is in charge of studying the Guyver. They're trying to work out if they can make more. They're trying to work out how it works.
That's the sort of the second MacGuffin there, right? Like the first half of the film is them trying to get the Guyver. But then it sort of turns out that they had access to the Guyver. They just didn't know how to activate it. And that's this question that keeps coming up of like, how did he activate the Guyver? You've got to tell us.
Yeah. I mean, that's the main reason that they've wanted Miski this whole movie. Because they're like, your dad made it. You must know how it works. Blah, blah, blah.
But she doesn't know, right? Like, she's like, I won't tell you. But she didn't see him put it on in the first place, which was just, I guess, knock it into your head. And then when he activated it the second time, I think it was like, just be angry and scared enough. Like, just sort of be in enough of a combat situation. It just sort of happens.
The Guyver is really more of a vibe.
Yeah.
So they show Mitski Max, who is strapped into a big tube in the lab. He seems to be... I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what they're doing to him. Maybe they're fitting him with a Guyver? I'm not sure.
Oh, no, it's doing some... There's like little surgical arms in there that seem to be like working away at his head. You would... If I was like, are they doing some kind of brain transplant thing? They're clearly, as we'll get into in a bit, putting some alien stuff in him.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, the sort of the exact nature of the technique, it kind of seems like it's, you know, doing a discretion shot because the sort of back of his head's open and it's operating on his brain. But that isn't happening. I think it's just doing sci-fi stuff to him in the tube.
Generic sci-fi nonsense.
Yeah.
Miski kicks Fulton in the balls and steals the Guyver. And then Jeff and another scientist transform into monster guys. They are also monster guys. Yay!
Yeah. Oh, and also the Guyver itself is growing. That's their
Yes.
observation of like, oh yeah, it was this steel ball when we recovered it from Sean, but it started growing little tendrils that are so disgusting.
Yeah, so my note was that it seems to be growing meat.
Yeah. just little strips of meat coming out. That's my note. When the Guyver is growing in her hand, it's insanely gross.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's dripping with long, stringy skin almost. It's horrible. It sort of looks like shaved pancetta.
It was, for a movie that's had multiple entire people sort of collapse and dissolve into goo, and a flesh pocket in the back of his neck storing a suit of armor. This was the bit that I was like, oh, that's disgusting.
Everyone's got a line. Some people don't like goo. Some people don't like meatballs.
I think it was the fact that, like, it was the meatball, which is like, okay, gross. But then once she's recovered it and she's holding it up in her hand being like, I've got the Guyver, I'm going to escape. And then it has like the close-up shot of the Guyver like still like extruding some more fleshy bits, like it's sort of like dangling down her wrist. That was about, I was like, ugh.
Dr. East's theory, he seems to think that the Guyver is cloning itself.
Yes.
So anyway, Stryker hits the Guyver into East's mouth, and then East accidentally swallows it, and the Guyver cuts itself out of him.
Yeah, he's on the ground. You see the big blade come out of his guts, and then the whole Guyver guy, he was a ball a few seconds ago, but I guess it ate enough of Dr. East to like transform into a whole person, but the whole suit of armor Guyver stands up out of a cavity in Dr. East's chest.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Full on. It's huge. It's rad.
It's such a good effect because basically Sean as Monster Guy comes out of Monster Dr. East's chest. It's brilliant. The thing I did like is that Monster Dr. East has the same little glasses on his monster face that Dr. East had when he was a human. That's fun. That's cute. Sean says, and this is the only line that I actually thought was kind of interesting, possibly because it's a hangover from the manga, but Sean says, "You can't kill me. I've been rejected by death."
It's a sick line.
I like it. Must be from the manga. This script is not good enough for that. More fighting. Fulton backs out of the room real subtle like, and I'll make a gif of it because it is so stupid.
The fighting itself is mad to me because the sort of the amount to which the aliens have hyped up how strong the Guyver is. Like, Fulton at one point earlier on describes it as like the power of 100 nuclear bombs is in this device sort of thing. And then during this fight scene, we see that the Guyver grants Sean the ability to punch on with about 2 aliens. Mm-hmm. And the aliens are each about as strong as 2 people. Like, it gives him some hand-to-hand combat ability.
Yeah, I would say that it gives him a slight upper hand.
Yeah, it's very much like when they were like, you know, oh, get it off him. I was like, aliens, guys, this is a terrifying weapon that's designed to destroy you. It's the most powerful thing in the universe. You should be a bit more scared. Bit of a reaction plot hole there. Be a bit scared of the super weapon. But then as the fight's happening, I was like, I mean, it's not unrealistic that they would win. Sure, they're getting some good hits in as well.
Misky does get Max out of the tube somehow. They escape. Fighting.
The tendril's doing the sci-fi experiments on him, and she's like, here's how to extract him safely. Smash the tube. Yank him off. He's all good. Yank him off, excuse me. Pull him out.
Maybe if that had happened, this movie would be more interesting. There's a bit where Sean has killed all the monsters and Mitsuki goes up to him to see if he's okay. It's meant to be a romantic moment, but they're not even touching hands. Like, she goes to touch him and she's like, oh, he's a bit gross. I won't touch him, though. But they're not touching hands, not even. And then Max comes up and he's like, save it for later. We got to get out of here. I'm like, save what? They're not doing anything. These two have zero chemistry. They are just standing there staring at each other. It's honestly, Mitsuki has more screen time and chemistry with Max in this movie.
Oh, unquestionably. They have Mitsuki and Sean have negative chemistry. Like, Mitsuki has more chemistry with the Aikido teacher than with Sean.
Maybe that's why she was over there. She was bringing her.
That's why he had to go around the corner and get dinner.
Yeah, bringing a book, eh? What is it? Sappho. The only lesbian book.
That's the one.
Mm-hmm. So Max turns into a monster and it's amazing. This creature is the headliner of the film for me.
Oh, yeah.
But it's classic Screaming Mad George. It is like, you know, if you've seen Society, you know, like some of the monsters that he did in that, like, this is wild. Whatever this creature is meant to be, it's insane, but it's also not like a super soldier. Like, this thing is not meant to fight. It is just meant to be gross.
Oh God, I was thinking of I was thinking of the huge alien that the villain turns into. No, God, Mark Hamill's transformation's horrifying. That really is. Oh boy.
Yeah, it's amazing. Oh my God, it's
there's
disgusting.
so much going on in that transformation. Ah.
It kind of reminded me of the end of The Fly. You know, when Brundlefly is in such a state and he is just crawling and wishing for death.
Yeah. And they sort of like kept his face on the sort of like the top half of his face stays intact, so he still has, you know, human expression eyes, even post transformation, which is like even more upsetting. It's both. It's just yeah. Oh, what a brutal transformation it is. There's bits everywhere. Whoa.
It's worth watching the film for because it's not a very long film.
No.
So you might as well watch the first 2/3 because in the last act you get monster Mark Hamill and Jeffrey Combs. That's enough of a movie for me.
And I've got to say, I earnestly enjoyed this whole film. Like, it's dumb. It's not good quality. There's no nutrition in this film. But I would just say, yeah, if you want just like a dumb film that's fun, Guyver's, you know, solid.
Yeah, it's a Big Mac.
Yeah, it's a Big Mac.
Well, Fulton eventually does emerge like a total creep. He's being very Dr. Hill here because, well, he wants to steal the ability to make fucked creatures that kill people. That's totally Dr. Hill. So Fulton becomes like a super monster.
Yes, this guy's huge.
He's probably the size of the set.
Like, he's so big, and he sort of like he walks backwards into this door, and he sort of appears as two glowing eyes first inside the door until the sort of like huge transformed version comes out of the door. It sort of seems like the fight scene's going to be like through the door, with the door sort of acting as a, like, you don't know how even big he is behind this sort of thing.
Yeah.
He seems like stuck in there for a bit, but then he obviously smashes out and he's just this huge guy in the room with him.
Yeah, he's sort of a bit of a mishmash of different creatures because he's got like a bunch of different antlers. He has a kind of a skin frill neck, dinosaur face, weird muscles, crab legs.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff going on.
Lot of stuff.
You know, he looks like he should have been in like the more fucked parts of Annihilation.
It's interesting to think because the aliens created the humans, but it didn't create like all the crabs and, you know, lizards and stuff, alien creations as well, or they're clearly experimenting with everything.
Did aliens create animals as well and humans? And then they were like, what if we just smush some of them together? What if we make a crab man?
Oh, how would we do that? I'll just stick him in the tube.
Yeah, the tube will do all the work. That's why we created tubes, to take some of the work off of us.
It's in the opening crawl. When they arrived on Earth, aliens created tubes. From there, the world was their plaything.
Oh, I've always wondered where tubes came from, but I always just assumed... I always, you know, in my heart, I wanted to believe that there were tubes after death, but Fulton tries to take the Guyver out of Sean, and it explodes. Blows him away.
Which was sort of foreshadowed when they were trying to take the Guyver out of him in the earlier fight. His chest was like, I'm gonna do a big attack. But they were like, I guess, quick enough. But this time...
Yeah, it's a little bit... I wouldn't say anticlimactic, but, you know, this character's meant to be the big bad. But it's also... The reveal of Fulton as a monster, that's more of what it's about. The fight scene that comes after is just incidental because they have to have a fight scene. The apex of this scene is obviously the reveal of this insane prop.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. Like, screaming
Great.
Mad George. I mean, in his... And everybody who worked on this film, like in the special effects and props divisions, like, full credit to you. You are the true stars of the show. You should have been paid more than Jimmy Walker. Yeah,
agreed. It's very much a show about that.
Sean comes out of the monster suit. Him and Mitski kiss. Who cares?
It's a bit of a, like... His reveal from that monster suit is like... He didn't know that he could do that. Like, he's been resurrected as the Guyver. Maybe this is him permanently forever. It clearly has that sort of, like, question mark hanging over his head for a bit. Where, you know, she comes up and she's like, oh, Sean, you know, you saved everybody. You know, if he went into like a you know, elephant man, you know, like, I'm so hideous though, is it possible for you to love me sort of monologue, and he's like about to deliver that, and then the guy was like, nah, you're good, bursts off him. He's whole and, healthy and human.
Yeah, he's pretty much gone back to normal, and I guess it's implied that he maybe could. Does he have control over it? Is he just going to become the Guyver at random?
It doesn't show the Guyver slipping into his neck like it did the first time. And because I was so horrified by that the first time, I was like, okay, he's a human again. It's going to show me his neck. And then it pans across and you can see his neck and there's no thing on it. I don't know if that's an intentional part of the sort of the film to be like, and check it out, his neck's intact. Or if it's just like, they didn't put the makeup on his neck to show that because they didn't care. It's the end of the film.
That makes sense. That makes sense that they're like, the Guyver's gone, he's fine again. He's also, I guess, a cloned version of himself, which is probably something that feels strange. The movie ends on a comic note because, of course, it does. We've got Monster Striker and one of Mark's CIA buddies at the very end.
Who was revealed to be a monster earlier in the film in such a irrelevant twist that it didn't even get mentioned. It's like, oh yeah, this side character, also an alien. Let's keep going.
Yeah. It's everyone's an alien. It's much of a muchness. And this is, of course, the last line of the film.
I got a job for you. Dynamite.
It's sort of, it's a bit sequel hook as well. It's like, he didn't kill all the aliens. The Guyver's still out there. And a little lighthearted joke. It's the hand bursting up out from the grave, but it's like giving a little thumbs up.
Yeah, so that's the Guyver in all its glory.
What a fun film.
Yeah, very, very, very silly. Very, very good to just have on with a few mates and a few beers. It's definitely less fun to watch on your own.
I mean, I had a blast I was obviously texting myself with little notes for this, so I didn't feel too alone.
Tom McLean, his own best friend. Wait, was your cat watching it with you? Was that at least helpful?
He was probably watching me. Sometimes when I'm on the couch, he likes to sort of sit facing the couch, just being like, "What are you doing? You haven't moved for a while." I'm like, "I'm watching the Guyver, bro. Don't worry about it."
You're his favorite movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a good bit of fun. Obviously could have used more Jeff, but
oh yeah, he's a bit part, but a good one.
Yeah, I imagine it would have just been like, obviously he would have known so many people involved in this movie. They would have been like, let's get Jeff in. He's fun. Here's this character that doesn't necessarily need to be like comedic or interesting, but we know Jeff will do that for this role. It's
a character that if you told me that like Jeff visited the set to say g'day, and they were like, "Oh, let's stick you in the movie," and they came up with his lines on the day, like that's not totally implausible.
Here's a bit of levity to go up against David Gale and his very strong, upsetting face.
He had some levity too as well, though, David Gale. Like the sort of the relationship between him and Liska, of like where Liska's sort of like, it's not just sort of like evil boss and henchman. Liska, when he's around the boss specifically, brings on like this really sort of like obsequious and sort of like pathetic air that he doesn't have. Not even like obsequious, like, "Oh, master, command me," but like a bit sort of parent-child, sort of like, "Please pay attention to me." It's sort of needy.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really interesting. He's trying to plan a trip to Brazil with his girlfriend. Like, come on.
He just wants to make enough money to go to Brazil. He wants to be a good employee to his boss.
And he wants to usher in an era of alien-human hybrids that are taking over the planet.
Well, you say it like it's a bad thing, but it's only a bad thing for the humans who get caught up in it. I imagine for the aliens, it's probably quite good.
And as they turn more and more people into aliens, more and more people will be better off.
Exactly. It's for the good of humanity to become an alien-human hybrid.
Don't knock it till you've tried it.
Bloody with pretty soon they'll have an alien-human hybrid mandate. You won't be able to get a job unless you're an alien-human hybrid. Won't be able to go on holiday or go on a picnic or anything.
Just because I'm a little bit reluctant, I have questions about being reduced to a strange blue sizzling goo and then cloned into a metal ball, having been rejected by death. Just because I have questions about that process, suddenly I'm the bad guy, huh?
Look, I want to do my own research about getting a ball inserted into my head that drips meat, okay?
I'm just going to believe whatever I read on Facebook about it, honestly.
I'm in this Telegram. Let me send you the link.
I would say I'm quite squeamish about, like, high-impact violence, but this movie is just like a lot of meats, but not, horribly painful, torturous meats. Just meats.
Tom McLean's review. Just meats.
It meets expectations.
Get out. All right, Tom McLean, anything to plug?
My own podcast, Not Good Enough. It's the podcast where we talk about climate change and Australian politics and being lefties and that.
Yeah, by the way, the podcast is called Not Good Enough. He wasn't just making a mean comment about himself there.
Yes, it's the Not Good Enough title refers to Australia's, climate policies, etc. And also our own sort of degree of response in that a podcast isn't going to fix it. So it's us and it's them.
Yes, I was lucky enough to be on Not Good Enough recently. If listeners, if you heard that, I had a great time, and I'm also a general listener because I like it as well. Even if you're not even if you're not Australian, it'll still be interesting because a lot of the stuff is just touches on general societal and political things that I guess everybody can relate to.
Yeah, and we're not a dry podcast. We're not just like, so hi today, welcome to Not Good Enough. We're going to talk about Australian politics and climate change for an hour and a half. We have fun, even though it's a strange sphere to have fun in.
Well, it is, but it is that thing of like, well, if you don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah.
What's a podcast without a few gentle ribbing pot shots at Scott Morrison? He deserves worse, to be honest. So you guys are actually quite gentle on him, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, we sort of go about as hard as a podcast can.
Yeah, without straying into libel and slander or threats.
But, nobody's ever been injured by a podcast, except if it's, like, thrown on a USB stick fast enough.
Yeah, it's playing out of a very heavy phone that someone yeets at your head and gives you a
The clip of the fella
concussion.
throwing his shoe at George Bush, but he's throwing a little Beats USB speaker.
What would be the best podcast to be playing when you knock someone out with a Bluetooth speaker? I'm going to say...
I'll, like, Sleep With Me.
Or, like, 99% Invisible,
If you threw it during one of their sort of more elaborate audio sort of performances where they sort of stitch lots of little bits of clips together, I imagine being clonked in the head with that would be very disorienting.
Yeah. Imagine the last thing you hear, before a very heavy Bluetooth speaker hits your head is like, we're here in downtown Illinois, and there's a very special building just up ahead.
Pow!
Thwack. Hey, I could die listening to Roman Mars. I think that'd be fine.
Oh yeah. Just learning one last interesting fact. Just showing up at the pearly gates there, St. Peter, and you being like, did you know? I just found out earlier. Sorry, I just heard this. I have to tell someone.
Did you know there's a swamp in America that... And then St. Peter obviously has the reaction that most people have when you talk about other podcasts, and he just sort of says, that sounds interesting, and then changes the subject.
Just closing this out on the idea of dying right after watching the Guyver and trying to bring that up with St. Peter, just being like, all right, so they're alien-human hybrids. It's great.
Me at the pearly gates. All right, St. Peter, there's this actor called Jeffrey Combs, all right? Now, I'm going to give you my top 10 favourite movies, and then I'll tell you why they're my favourites.
Lisa,
okay?
Let's look at the sort of summary of your life. And he looks down, and there's like a big interstitial bit that's just a summary of Jeffrey Combs' life, just interposed. Okay, we've got an aside.
Yeah, St. Peter's like pretending to listen, but he's like on his phone, like under the table.
IMDbing furiously. Oh, I have seen that guy.
Oh, is that guy? Oh, yeah, I do like him, yeah. And then they send me to hell. Well, as usual, you can find this podcast on Twitter and Instagram at ReanimatesPod, on Facebook and Tumblr at ReanimatesPodcast, and Reanimates Podcast on YouTube if you want to listen to the episodes there. Subscribe, rate, get in touch, join the conversation, all that stuff. I mean, I know you're all busy. It's tough. I just like saying hi. I like having friends in the internet. Come and say hi to me.